Thank you for that introduction. That's very nice. Hi, guys. As you know, as you mentioned, I'm Anushka. I'm gonna give like a short, maybe like 15-minute stops presentation. It's just like an overview of the basic sort of things that people tell you. You might have heard this stuff from your mentors. I might sound repetitive, and I apologize for that. But I can't assume that everyone knows the basics, right? So I'll be going over those. And after that, it's just I'm available to clear all of your doubts. You can put them in the chat box, or if you want to unmute, I guess that's possible. I'm not sure if that's possible, but yeah, I'll clear all of your doubts. Just give me a second to share my screen. Right. So could someone confirm that the presentation is visible and also that I'm audible? Yeah, great. Right. Also, can you guys unmute, or like do you not see that option? Like
We
just
can.
asking.
Yes,
Oh
ma'am,
yeah,
you can.
great. Okay, please don't call me ma'am, guys. But yeah, you can call me Anushka. It's fine. Anyways, so just like even before we like begin with the whole thing, I wanted to ask you all. Do you think there's a difference between CR and English? And if you do, what do you think that difference is? Because a lot of people like the difficulty start there, right? You don't understand why there's two different sections where they're asking somewhat similar questions. So yeah, do you guys think there's a difference?
I guess there is. One of the main differences is the length of the passage.
Right,
CRF comparatively is shorter. And then in the English section, I feel we need to pay more importance to the facts of the passage. But in CR, we have to more focus on the take an overlook or the bird view of what the author is trying to say, and you look out for what are the assumptions he's been making.
right, right. Does anyone else want to like say something? Address that question? No? Okay. So yeah, I do agree with what I think Rutvik said to a certain extent. I do think there's a difference between CR and English. He said in English we have to focus more on the facts, and whereas in CR you take more of an overview. Separately for English and CR and all. But largely the kind of approach that I cultivated, I looked at both sections with the same approach, and that did help me in the examination. This is my opinion. Of course, you may differ, but yeah. Anyway, so reading for CR, when I say reading for CR, that means when you read a passage normally, you read it for comprehension, right? Yeah, I'm sure you guys must be reading newspapers for GK. So when you read the newspaper, you try to find out, what happened, when it happened, who was involved, all those like sort of lists of questions and all. That's how you try to understand the event. But reading for CR is something which I viewed, at least during my study, as fundamentally different than reading for comprehension. Of course, comprehension has to happen, otherwise you won't be able to solve a question. But your primary focus should be on something else, and comprehension should happen mechanically, right? So what I mean is that when you read the passage, a lot of people go through the like entire passage word by word, which is understandable because passages tend to be tough, right? Sometimes you see like maybe some kind of philosophical passage and you're like, what is this, where is it coming from? Anyways, that's understandable that you want to go through it word by word, but the fact is that CLAT, anybody who's giving CLAT, no matter how good they are, they face a time crunch. So you have to prioritize certain things and deprioritize others. Now one way you can do that and manage your time effectively is reading those passages in a way that saves time. Like I spoke about the basics of an argument and how CR majorly tests you on that. So when you read a passage, like when I read a passage, I would majorly focus on any conclusion, and any other opinions that the author has expressed in support of that conclusion. For like if they're asking for an assumption, the assumption depends on the premise, which is an assumption is an unstated premise, as I'm sure both of you, as I'm sure all of you know. So the assumption, uh, determining the assumption depends on what the conclusion of the argument is. Then I would go back to my conclusion, analyze the premises, and see what information was missing. If you're talking about strong or weak arguments, then those arguments are ultimately the author's arguments. So having the conclusion highlighted or any supplementary opinions highlighted really helps you to eliminate from the options. So when I say reading for CR, I mean, let's say there's an economics passage, okay, and they are saying, they're giving you a statistic saying that the sales of the export of wheat in this past year has been something something. There's a number. Now, when you're looking at a passage from like maybe a GK perspective, you would read the numbers because those are important fact sets, right? But CR is not really here to test you on fact sets. So when you're approaching a CR passage, you see a number and you skip that sentence. You see a fact that's irrelevant. You see a fact and you skip that sentence. Just go directly to the author's opinions, the author's conclusion. And when I say skip that sentence, I don't mean like, just like move past it, right? Obviously, you see the sentence, you see, okay, this has a number. So you get a brief idea of what the author is saying. I'm saying don't read it deliberately word by word and try to piece it together. That job is something that you are going to be doing while solving the questions anyway. So when you're reading the passage, just take the overview of the sentence, move to the next sentence. If you see a conclusion, read it deliberately, try to understand, okay, this is what the author is trying to say. But you don't have to do that for each and every sentence in the passage. And that's like, it seems like a very minute sort of thing, but when you add it up for all of your English and all of your CR passages, you end up saving a lot of time. So that's the first thing I sort of wanted to say. The other thing is being comfortable with not understanding a meaning. I talked about like difficult passages already. For me personally, I think they would have certain economics passages that I initially could not understand. Of course, I developed the ability later by reading like through newspapers and all. I could get it, but it's perfectly all right to come across a passage that you don't understand. Right, a lot of people, their whole inhibition with English and CR, it starts there. You see a passage and the like first sentence of the passage has three words that you've never seen before in your life, and you're like, how am I expected to solve this sort of thing if I don't even understand what the author is saying? So that tends to happen a lot of times. But uh, y- in order to kind of reason out what is going on, whether in English and CR, this applies to both, you need to develop a certain level of comfort with not understanding what the author is saying. Like obviously, if you've read an entire passage and I asked you, what is this passage about, and you could not give me an answer, then that's a concern you actively do need to look into. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, okay, I'm reading this passage, this is a philosophical passage. I understand that, maybe this guy is XYZ philosopher is trying to say broadly, he's trying to talk about the nature of the self. I did not understand this particular point that he has made. I don't understand the meaning of this particular word that he has used. Broadly, the passage talks about this. He makes this sentence is his conclusion, this sentence is his opinion that is given in support of the conclusion. It's not the main conclusion, and everything else is just what he uses to substantiate his conclusion, right? So that level of summarization you should be able to do. But beyond that, if you're unable to understand what an author is saying, there's no reason to like immediately panic and think, how am I going to solve these questions? Or maybe even go back to reading the passage from the beginning. uh, that's a waste of your time. And very often I've had experiences where I spent a lot of time trying to understand the passage and went to the questions, and I was able to solve all five questions without then even understanding what the author was saying in the first place. So you might just find at the end of your like whole panic ridden passage journey that the questions aren't even testing the stuff you don't understand, right? So it's important to develop a certain level of comfort with the fact that sometimes you won't understand what the passage is saying. As long as you get a brief overview, it is fine. The next thing I wanted to talk about was vocabulary. Now, this is also connected to my last point. Uh, सबकी vocabulary अच्छी नहीं होती. I'm sorry if no, if there's people who aren't comfortable with Hindi. Not everyone has a good vocabulary. Uh, or an excellent vocabulary. You don't always understand the meaning of every word. I know I don't. But that doesn't again need to make you insecure or need to make you panic while solving a difficult passage, right? If vocabulary in general in the new CLAT pattern is sort of a niche question, you'll get max two separate vocab questions in your paper, if any. you'll need it, of course, while interpreting the passages and all of that. So I wouldn't suggest you discard it entirely, but I wouldn't suggest you do it obsessively. Now there's a like amount of literature that's available on vocabulary. You'll find 10 books written on the subject. You'll find coaching centers. If you guys have joined any coaching classes, you'll find their lists. You'll find websites online, GRE list, GMAT list. There's a lot of material, right? So since it's already something that the new CLAT pattern doesn't kind of focus on, I don't really see you guys investing a lot of time in covering a lot of vocabulary. I would suggest, if you want to cover vocabulary, you want to increase your vocab, focus on your newspaper reading and your mocks as your two main sources. Any words you don't understand there, do them properly, try to understand them properly. Keep quizzing yourself. A lot of people focus on memorizing the words, learning them by heart, whereas all what you have to that's not what you actually have to do in the exam. In the exam, you have to extract the meaning of the word from whatever you remember, right? So you're essentially repeating a different skill than the one that you are going to have to reproduce in the exam. So even if you've learned like 5 words and you have someone else who's doing 20 words, it doesn't matter. Go at your own pace. The thing you have to focus on with vocab is retention. Quiz yourself, ask someone else to quiz you, do flashcards. There's a website called Quizlet. You can do online flashcards. You can ask friends. There's website called vocabulary.com where you can play like quizzes online with your friends, regardless of what mode of study you choose to do, online, offline. Focus on quizzing yourself, focus on newspapers and mocks as a source, and center your entire vocabulary preparation around that, and you guys should be fine for vocab. uh, Now about reading. Now in the first point I talked about how you read for CR, right? You don't focus a lot on the facts, you go directly to the conclusion and stuff like that. So a great way to do this is the editorial page, right? Like I used to read the Hindu for CLAT. So on the Hindu, on the editorial page, there would be two articles on the side. That is the actual editorial, everything else is the op-ed, right? So both of those two editorials I would read the way that I have just described to you guys. Reading for CR, I would start off with the title, subtitle. Okay, this is what the article is about. What are the author's main arguments? There would be 3 or 4 sub arguments, one overarching main argument. Uh, One thing that I used to do in the beginning, I later stopped doing it, but once I got proficient at it, is I would get the physical paper and I would kind of black out the titles. That is, I would like put some tape over the titles, or like just put something over it, not look at the titles. I would go through the article, I would underline the sub arguments, author's opinions, the main argument, and then I would try to see if the title matched what I had identified as the main argument, right? Because the title is usually about that. It's a newspaper, so they have to be concise, so the title is the main argument. So you can do that and you can test your skills of identifying the main conclusion. So combining this should literally have you set for English and CR, because the reading skill set for both is the same, at least in my opinion. Right. Moving on to one second. Sectional tests. Right. The last point. Sectional tests are literally the most important part. They were the most important part of my English and CR preparation. Mocks were the other. 50% of the other credit goes to mocks. But yeah, sectional tests are an excellent tool. If you have access to coaching, you have to use that privilege, because uh, you don't often have time to give an entire mock. Sectional tests will help you regardless. Or I've talked like a big talk about reading for CR, identify the conclusion, don't read all of this. The fact of the matter is, when you're giving a mock and you know that okay, I have to do well, you have a certain target in your head or whatever it is, it's hard to remember all of these techniques while you're in that atmosphere of giving a mock, whether you're at your center, you're at home. If you guys are serious test takers, then it's hard to remember all of these like tips and techniques and all of that. So the way to internalize new methods of approaching the passage or the question into like your own traditional method, the way to tweak that or like change it, whatever, in whichever way you want, is to practice through sectional tests, right? So if you have when I say that, I would only read the conclusion and all, I didn't start out that way. I started out reading like a normal person, going word by word and all of that. The way that I was able to incorporate this was by practicing in sectional tests, so that in mocks it would be a second nature to me. So, yeah, that's about it for preparation strategy. A small thing I wanted to show you. This is a passage from one of my old mocks, right? It's a fairly long passage. It was in English, I believe. Um, and this is the passage. This is the part of the passage that I would read. Okay. So, like, for example, let me just walk you through how I would do it. Now, a few decades ago, Ronald Reagan said, it's a quote. I don't think they're going to ask me about a quote. If they do, I know where the quote is. I can see, it's a paragraph. I can see the quotes, the quote signs. I can see the exclamation mark. I'm done. Now, after all the imaginary enemies, okay, these are examples of this. I don't need to read the examples. If it's a fact question, I can come back to this part. It's demarcated by the hyphens. We have a real and present danger, an entity capable of mass destruction. No one can spot until it is actually inside a human. Right. So basically, the passage is about COVID. This is the first thing I would highlight. Right. Deadly COVID 19 isn't from outer space, but it might as well be. Where did it come from? Then they're exploring that. How will it change our perspective? Immediate, short term, long term. Long term. We see ourselves not as individuals, but as part of the huge chain of humanity. Then our future depends on the next generation. They've been exposed before emotional maturity to this like sort of primary fear of survive, like will I survive or will I die because of COVID-19. Now children see that their parents are also afraid and they're controlling this fear with some difficulty, right? Then it talks about school teachers and all of that. Finally, this is an appeal. Now this is like a major clue. This is what the author is writing the passage for. Directly question आ जाएगा, what is the purpose of this passage, what is the purpose behind the author writing this passage. This is an appeal to schools to take value add into classrooms to help children deal with emotions. Otherwise there will be chaos because these children will be traumatized by COVID-19. This is the crux of whatever the author is trying to say. Now when you read, obviously, like there are things like, okay, quote Ronald Reagan said, I can skip this. Okay, examples of children this, okay, I can skip this. This part, the truth is that it came out of all of this I glanced over, but immediately I was able to tell, okay, this is just him trying to substantiate what he said earlier. Is he adding something new? That's the question you should be asking every step of the way. Is he adding something new to the argument, or is he substantiating a previous argument? If he's not adding something new, okay, I've glanced over it. Is he adding something new? Okay, okay, then what is it? This is the kind of approach you need to do. So you see how, like, this is a big passage, and then if you come to the important parts of the passage, it's just this is all you need to solve your 5 questions. So when you develop that ability to read in this way, you end up saving a lot of time. um, right. Now, moving on to mock strategy, there's two main aspects of mocks. There's attempt, there's analysis. Let's start with attempt. First, as I covered, reading and annotating the passage. A lot of people, like including myself, tend to over underline, over highlight all of that. It's a natural tendency. Of course, you read it and you're like in the whole hectic mock atmosphere. You're like, what if this is important? What if that is important? All of this will be solved by practicing with your sectional tests and all. Um, so reading and annotating the important parts of the argument is important. A lot of times the passages be aage piche hote hain, like the passage on one page, the question is on another page. Then it's hard for you to flip back and forth read it. So I would recommend annotating, regardless if that's not your thing. uh, please feel free to adopt your own style. This is just like a generic recommendation based on what worked for me. Now, a lot of people have asked me this: passage first versus question first, right? And I would say it's important to stay flexible. Me personally, I would do the passage first because I had grown used to reading in a fast manner, as the kind that I showed you guys. I would read the passage first, then I would move to the questions. People do like to read the questions first so that they can get an idea of what the important part of the argument is. Now, if you are able to identify that independently while reading the passage, then well and good, you can do the passage first. But if you are facing any trouble कि मतलब important तो बोल रहे हो, but which part of the argument is important? I don't know which part is important. So then you can go to the questions and see, is this referring to a specific part of the argument, get a brief idea of what is going on. Then that will kind of point you towards the important parts. uh, Identifying the question type and common logical traps. Now, this is the whole crux of the matter. You see a question, first of all, it's an assumption question, and there's certain, for example, it's an assumption question. There's certain like common traps that are associated with each and every question types. There's a finite set of question types. You get your assumption questions, you get strong, weak argument questions, you get your main idea and purpose of the author questions, and you get okay, would the author agree or disagree, which is author का stance क्या है, और like the outside stance, and you have to match whether or not the two concur on something or not. Very rarely you will get like parallel reasoning questions, like for example, if the author has said A, B, therefore C, which of the following four arguments matches this format. So parallel reasoning is a very rare type, but largely it will cover your assumption, conclusion, strong, weak argument. These are your three main like trinity of important question types. Each of these types also comes with a set of common logical traps that the examiner will set for you in the options. For example, a common logical trap is uh, when you say, would the author agree with this or not? And let's say the author is talking about flowers in general. Okay, flowers as like he's saying like maybe all flowers are beautiful, right? So there is a certain, like for example, if the thing is, one of the options is about one particular kind of, a very particular example, that's a common trap, right? Hello, am I audible? I'm not audible to Tushar. Am I audible to someone, everyone else?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes,
Yeah,
you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So I guess Tushar, it's a problem on your end. Anyways, right. So if the author is saying something generic and the option is saying something specific, then you have to test whether or not the specific thing applies. Very often there'll be a trap like, the specific sort of thing doesn't really apply because the author is trying to say something generic. So he would not agree with this like very specific thing. Right. So there's these sort of question types that and their associated common logical traps that you guys will notice in the course of your preparation, while you're giving mocks, sectional tests, while you're analyzing these. So identifying these really helps to speed up your like elimination process, right? So you see that option, you're like, oh, this is specific, this is generic, you cut it out and then you move on. And the other thing is, yes, we come to elimination. Elimination is the key to solving English and CR, because a lot of times we have our own internal reasoning, right? I'm not saying it's going to be wrong, but it's not going to be 100% accurate. Mine isn't 100% accurate. No one's is. So if your internal reasoning, you think, okay, this will be the answer to this question, and you find that answer in the options, then well and good, then you're set, right? Even if that's wrong, at least you know where you went wrong in your reasoning. But that it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes, you think the answer will be this, you don't see it in the options. Other times you're so confused, you read the options, you're more confused, you're like, how did I even understand the passage? Should I reread the question, should I reread the passage? You go into that entire kind of loop. Now, the only way to tackle all of these problems is approaching them through the method of elimination, right? So a lot of time the instruction above your passage says read the passage and identify the most appropriate option. What they mean by most appropriate answer is not the right answer. A lot of times passages won't have the right answer. Your internal reasoning might be 100% correct when you think that the correct answer isn't there in the four options. Okay. So, but the point is not to find the right answer. A lot of people get hung up on that and then they can't move forward. The point is to find, as they have said, the most appropriate option. So elimination just means finding the least wrong answer. As I said before, common logical traps factors in here. You look at the question, you look at the options, you're like, sahi answer to nahi hai yahan pe, I can't see it. Okay, fine. This option A is definitely wrong. This is a kind of logical trap. Option B, definitely wrong. This is another kind of trap. Now, C or D may uh, C and D both seem logically sound, but D pertains more to the main argument of the passage, whereas C is more about a tangential kind of inference that may or may not be made. Therefore, option D. Now, C or D both might seem correct, but which one seems more correct, right? So, eliminating factors in there. And then lastly, we come to leaving hard questions. Now, I am an advocate of attempting as many questions as possible, right? Because I mean, lot of people focus on like leaving the right question, but the strategy that worked out for me in CLAT 2022 is I saw the GK section. I'm not sure if you guys have attempted it, but it was generically considered that a few questions from the GK section were out of scope, like we did not understand where they were coming from. There were questions that none of us could answer, right? So I saw the GK section and I thought, okay, I don't know if people are I don't know how difficult or easy this paper is going to be. Then I moved on to other sections. I felt like the English section was lengthy but easy. But considering that the GK section was difficult and it tends to upset a lot of people, and also that the English section was lengthy, I thought, people would have problems in completing the paper or attempting more number of questions. So my entire strategy was predicated on attempting as many questions as possible. In general, also, regardless of the kind of mock, I would advise attempting as many questions as possible until and unless your practice mocks are showing you hard evidence that it is costing your accuracy in a horrible, in like a very obvious way. Like, for example, without attempting these negatives, you would have gotten 100 and you're getting 60. It's an entirely possible result. It's rare, I would say. But regardless, if you can make a guess, even if you can eliminate one option, I would suggest to go for it. Largely, if you can eliminate two, then there's no reason. It's a bad bet to leave that question. If you can eliminate one, I would still suggest to go for it. But that depends on your individual level of comfort. uh, Coming specifically to English and CR, there's hard questions. Like, for example, you've read the passage, you've understood the passage, you suddenly encounter a question that makes you you know doubt whether or not you've understood the passage in the first place. That's a hard question. If you feel like going back to the passage, if it's a fact that you have to go back to, by all means go back to the passage. Otherwise, for understanding, there's no point in going back to the passage. So if you feel yourself going into a loop, right? Oh, I don't understand this question, I've read the options, I don't understand the options, should I go back to the passage? Okay, have I gone back to the passage, have I understanding anything new, I'm coming back to the this is a kind of loop that you're stuck in. It's important to snap out of it and move on. Now, that could decrease your attempts in any particular mock, but you have to realize that while it feels like it is just you, a mock is something that's been given by literally all of your competition. Everyone is experiencing some version of the same thing. So uh, ultimately, it's important to remember that you're facing a time crunch. The question is not hard. Given more time, you would be able to reason it out. So leave the question and move on. However, if you are facing a lot of hard questions, then that is something problematic. You maybe need to look at how have you understood the basics. Is your understanding of CR or English adequate? Should you practice more? That sort of thing. Uh, Now, moving on to analysis. Classifying your questions is important. I told you about question types in the exam and associated logical things. While how you solidify your, like, in the exam, in the split second, how you determine whether or not this is an assumption question, this is a whatever, the quick kind of split second definition of question type occurs when you classify it properly during your analysis. You have lots of time to do your analysis. It would take me around 2 hours, but initially it would take it could take longer. I know people who would take 4 hours initially. Try to shorten that time as you move along, but yeah, majorly focus on doing a good analysis. Classifying the questions is important. For English and CR section specifically, I would first go look at my wrong questions, read the passage, attempt it again, see if my second attempt was matching my first attempt and which is the correct answer, and trying to like sort of reconcile the three. And then I would move on to associated correct questions. By that I mean just that, let's say in passage in questions 1 to 5, I've gotten questions 2 and 3 wrong. Initially, I go to question 2. I read the passage, I think, okay, option B is the answer. Then I check to see if option B is correct. If I had attempted option B the first time, what is the reasoning given for option B? I write down the question type, I write down the justification that I had in my mind while attempting the mock. I write down their justification and I try to see, okay, is there a mismatch between these things? After I do the same for question 3, I move on to questions 1, 4, and 5 that I got correct. Okay. And at this point, I don't have to read the passage. I don't even, like, most of the times you'll remember the reasoning. Like, it sounds like you're, how can I attempt a 2 hour mock again? But most of the times you'll remember the reasoning, so it won't even take you, like, ordinarily if it takes you 5 to 6 minutes to solve a passage, it won't even take you that time when you're doing it again in the analysis. It'll take you probably 3 minutes and all, right? So I will go to the wrong questions, then go to the associated correct questions. Even for correct questions, you'll find that sometimes the reason you chose the correct option and the reasoning that they have given is different, which is why it's important to sort of analyze the correct questions. Then looking for patterns in questions, as I mentioned, classify the question type, classify, what was your reasoning, what was their reasoning. Look at the other options, see, okay, is this option representing a logical trap? Is this too specific? Is this too broad? Classify the wrong options as well. Essentially find the patterns. Once you find these patterns, it should be quite easy, right? And then moving on to trusting your instinct. There's a lot of times even after completing all of this process where you're like, this is the wrong answer, this is clearly the wrong answer. Maybe, option B should be correct and their reasoning is also wrong. A lot of times there are, one, mistakes in mocks, just plain mistakes. Two, the the mock's reasoning is wrong. So, I mean, I know it sounds kind of presumptuous. You feel like, I don't know what the answer is. These guys are experts and all of that. But these guys are also, a lot of times, guys who have given CLAT a lot earlier, right? Or you are the one who are preparing. And if, like, despite all of this detailed analysis, you feel like, your reasoning is correct, just move on. Classify it as a crap question. I got this advice from one of my seniors. When they would analyze the mock, they would classify certain questions as crap questions, as in the reasoning is kind of stupid, this sort of question won't even come in CLAT, it's quite abstract reasoning, and they are wrong. So you classify that as a crap question. You don't try to sort of delve into it and determine is there any insight to uh, find out. Moving on to certain common problems that I have encountered in my prep, in my friends preparation, and that people have asked me. A lot of people face problem with vocabulary. I feel like I covered this before, so I'll just move through this quickly. Mock based and newspaper based preparation. Any word you encounter in the newspaper or in the mocks that you don't understand, focus on that. Focus on retention, not on memorizing. Keep quizzing yourself. That's the only way you're going to retain that large an amount of words. There's a lot of material, the coaching material and all. I personally did not rely on coaching material a lot during my preparation also, and not for vocab also. There's vocabulary books that are a good alternative if you prefer, if you're a paper pencil sort of person. There's books, I think Word Power Made Easy is a good book if you want to go into that. It is, I will warn you, it is kind of complicated, right? The kind of exams that those books are for, it, it's not the same as CLAT. Vocab is a very minor part of CLAT. So it's not necessary that, if I said Word Power Made Easy, you buy that book, you go through all of the chapters, you follow all of the techniques. You have to cater what they are saying to what you require. If you have read 3 chapters, you've understood their in general approach, then you close the book and you try to apply that approach to newspaper and mock, and that is working for you. Then just stop it right there, and there's no need to feel guilty or no need to feel like you should do more. It's important to know where to stop in CLAT, because I would say, apart from math, there's no syllabus. The sky is the limit when it comes to stuff you can cover. Vocabulary.com personally helped me a lot. I would go through my mocks, my newspapers, I would make lists on there, and I would play these games called Vocab Jams with my friends. And it's fun also, like if you've done a mock, you've already read the newspaper, given a mock, done an analysis, and you're tired, you're like, क्यों हो रहा है ये क्लाट मेरे साथ, क्यों कर रही हूँ? When you're in that phase of your preparation, it's a good break, and it keeps you informed as well. So I would recommend that. Moving on to comprehension. Again, I covered this. If you can't understand the meaning, it's totally fine, guys. As long as you can estimate the meaning. Contextual vocabulary and contextual interpretation are two of the most important skills you guys will need in CLAT. Even in law school, I need those. We have readings, I don't always understand them, right? So, if you can't understand the literal meaning, it's no use to focus on that. Focus on, oh, can I estimate the meaning of this word as per, the larger context of the passage or the larger context of the sentence. This is a sort of skill that you can focus on while reading your newspapers, while solving topic tests, sectional tests, mocks. Estimation is the more important skill, not comprehension or not like retention of vocab and all of that. Moving on to reading speed. Yeah, guys, reading speed is unfortunately, I mean, it's quite important. It's hard for a lot of people to develop. I completely get that. There's a lot of online speed reading material that you can access for free. I can't really remember anything right now, but just like Google speed reading, it's a very in demand skill among a certain set of people on there. So you'll find a lot of literature on how to develop these sorts of things. You can time yourself if that's the sort of thing that motivates you. Someone's asking about, I think, the needed speed for CLAT. I would say, like, I think between 250 to 300 words per minute is fine. But yeah, you can time yourself if that's motivating. Focus on trying to see if you can implement that preparation and all of that. There's online speed reading material that I refer to, but mostly I think I read two or three articles. I wrote down, okay, this is essentially what these guys are saying, and I tried to implement it in my editorials and all. I would time myself and write down the time next to the title or something like that, and I would try to see if it is progressing or not. If you don't see a cleared upward trend, there is nothing to worry about. A lot of times it does tend to happen. People think progress just kind of happens like this. A lot of times it's like this, it goes down, it goes really up, it goes down again. That tends to happen with your mock scores as well. The important thing is reading speed develops over time. All you can really do until CLAT to achieve your optimum reading speed is keep reading faster, right? So score stagnancy. As I said, same thing happens with your mock scores. They'll go up sometimes, they'll go to the trenches, they'll come back again. It's an unfortunate fact of life. That's how you need to look at it. That's how I learned to look at it as well. Obviously, I had my highs and lows. I went through a very horrible phase after, I think, my board exams, where I was getting terrible scores, and I it was quite close to CLAT. So I was questioning, why I was doing this thing in the first place. But it's an unfortunate fact of life, right? Every CLAT is a very subjective kind of the subject material of CLAT is subjective, but the pattern is objective. And the result of this is you can't even compare any two mocks, right? You can't say ki, oh, my friend got 90 in this mock and I gave another mock and I got 80, so I'm not doing as well as he is. That's an unfair comparison, because each question is fundamentally different. You can't even compare one mock ka English section or dusre mock ka English section. So which is why score stagnancy, your scores varying a lot, all of this tends to happen. All you need to do is keep pushing through it, right? The trends will go upwards when they have to, and even if they are not, they are no reflection on how you will perform in your actual CLAT, right? You have to do your rigorous analysis in the way that I described before, but if you've developed a different method that is working for you, then stick to that. You have to go over your basics. Oftentimes people try to look for a pattern in their analysis. Even coaching centers or even your mentors will tell you, your CLAT mentors from coaching centers often tell you, find a pattern, you're making this pattern of mistake, then you can fix it. And a lot of times you're like, in my previous mock I didn't make any question a mistake in like weakening argument questions, and in this mock I've gotten three wrong, what is going on? So patterns you do tend to find sometimes, and it is helpful. You don't always find a very big pattern that is sort of advertised. Sometimes you just kind of fall out of touch with the concept. That does not mean you are not good at that concept. That does not mean it's a large pattern of something that is wrong with your preparation. Okay, in this mock I got three weakening questions wrong. Fine, I'm going back to the basics. I'm seeing if I understand the concept. Okay, I do understand the concept. I'm going to sectional tests, and in the next mock I'll focus on at least not getting these weakening questions wrong. That's pretty much all you can do, right? So that's the sort of thing that will get you through your score stagnancy, and like it'll probably help your scores to stabilize. That is what happened in my case. Now, I mentioned basics earlier. So for CR basics, GMAT and LSAT questions helped me a lot. I didn't really do a lot of theory as such. I didn't go into, what is an assumption. I did not watch those lectures or read those kind of read that material. I would solve these GMAT and LSAT questions. GMAT questions you can find, I think, on Telegram or online also. LSAT questions, there's a free US LSAT course on Khan Academy. Obviously, it's tougher than what you're used to, so don't really hold yourself you to it if you get questions wrong there. But it does help you to kind of outlook you need for CLAT. Uh, for editorials, I told you about reading editorials and identifying the main parts of the argument. That helps a lot. Sectional tests, it helps with practice. And resolving your mocks while you're doing your analysis, as I mentioned, you resolving matlab not 2 घंटा बैठ के वापस solve किया, that's a waste of time. But resolving as and when you're doing the analysis, where you'll save like at least 2 minutes. Yeah, I guess Anish has sent the link, the Khan Academy link. Right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's move to your doubts. I'll go to some doubts in the chat box. I guess there have been doubts and I haven't really covered it. In Okay, so there's someone, I think Muskan is facing a problem in CR but not in English. Specifically, they aren't able to do inference questions. I feel like Muskan, you've solved a lot of your problem yourself by identifying it, right? You're saying English meko aa raha hai, in CR I'm not able to do questions in one go and questions like inference. So you know the problem. Now, if you're focusing specifically on solving questions in one go, it feels, I'm not sure, because I feel like if you elaborated it, there could be other dimensions to it, but it feels to me like it's fundamentally uh, like stamina kind of problem. You read the passage, you come to the question, you forget, what did I read in the passage, that sort of thing. In that case, the highlighting technique that I mentioned, going to the main parts of the argument, that should help you to refer back to the passage in case you need it, and also kind of cement the important parts of the passage in your head such that you don't need to refer to the passage in the question. So you talked specifically about inference questions. It's good that you've classified it and you know what to look for, so you can work on that. Moving on to, hold on, how to increase attempt rate. um, Attempt rate is something that I always had a high attempt rate from the beginning. But if you're getting a large number of negatives, it's completely understandable why you wouldn't have a high attempt rate. I would focus on your accuracy, and as your accuracy slightly improves, you should take that as a sign to be bold with your attempt rate. It's important to attempt a maximum number of questions. Uh, do you So yeah, basically it's a gradual process. Keep comparing your and contrasting your attempt rate with your accuracy, and at any point if you feel like it's not an optimum balance, then like kind of focus on accuracy as a way for increasing your attempt rate. That's what I did. Now someone is asking, do you speed read or skim editorials? So I feel like skimming is a part of speed reading. I will go through the facts, I'll skim the facts. For this, I will spend, for their conclusions or their opinions, like their sub conclusions, I'll spend more time. But yeah, and that's essentially what speed reading is, at least to me. How can we check the arguments that was guessed was correct? That's what, see, the title will essentially reflect the main argument, right? If the author is trying to say, uh, let's say sex education should be made mandatory in every school in India, right? And the title of the piece would usually be something like sex education is a necessity or something like. This is a bad title, but I'm not a journalist, so it's fine. uh, so in that case, what I would do is sort of cover the title, read the passage. Oh, see, okay. So basically, the author is talking. Let's make sex education mandatory for schools in India. So sex education is the main point, and he wants to make it mandatory. These are all of the substantiating things. Then you go read the title, and you're like, okay, so he's saying it's a necessity, broadly talking about the same thing. So I was right. That's how you verify. How do you know which is to be important? Underlined, red, highlighted, all of that. Uh, as I mentioned, every kind of passage is a broad argument. Every argument has a conclusion. So you will have one main conclusion. Now, a broad argument is constructed of sub arguments. You will have sub conclusions. The basics of what a conclusion is and what an inference is, that will cover your identification of these parts of the passage. There will be indicator words such as therefore, uh, because, whatever it is. Uh, there will be indicator words for premises as well. I would not advise memorizing them. Going through them once is enough. um, Essentially, you should know what constitutes a conclusion and what clearly does not. Like, for example, if the author is saying, you know uh, 25% of something something something, now that clearly cannot be a conclusion until and unless the passage is an analytical passage, and earlier he's saying, out of 100, 25 people said this, so 25% of people cannot do this. Now that, in that case, you're concluding to the 25% from the previous data. But mostly, if it's a statistic, it can't be a conclusion. It's a fact statement. It's a premise that you're using to support something else. So covering the basics of what a conclusion is, what a premise is, that should help you. Then how many questions to attempt? Maximize your attempts, guys. I attempted all of the questions in English and CR, so just maximize that. How much relevance does tone questions and figure of speech questions have? Right. Figure of speech, I would say, is a very minor part. I did not cover figure of speech throughout my entire preparation. The day before CLAT, when I was revising, all I did for English was read through a list of tones and a list of figure of speech. Tone questions are important. I would suggest you focus on those, like tone lists that materials, coaching materials will give you, or you'll find them online as well. But I would suggest materials because they tend to cater them, coaching materials, they tend to cater them well specific towards CLAT. You can also make your own list by going through your previous mocks, but that's a tedious job. Tone questions are important because a lot of times you don't really understand the words, and that's the one place where your like contextual understanding of vocabulary will not help you. Like, if you don't know what didactic is, you can't assess whether or not that's the tone for the passage. So I would suggest to focus on familiarizing yourself with the tone vocabulary, focusing on your past mocks, your coaching material. That should be enough. There will hardly be one or two of these questions, I think, in the actual CLAT. So for figure of speech, I guess you guys will have covered that at least until 10th. I think English is there for 11th, 12th also, so you'll have figure of speech as well. So I did not do figure of speech separately. I just read through a list before I went for CLAT. I don't think it's a very important topic. You guys shouldn't stress out a lot even if you get like one question wrong. Uh, ओके, अटेम्प्ट रेट कैसे इंक्रीज करें? अराउंड 70 अटेम्प्ट करने में 2 आवर्स कंप्लीट हो जाते हैं. सो राइट, सो बेसिकली व्हाट यू आर फेसिंग इज अ टाइम मैनेजमेंट इशू, राइट? Focus on where you are tending to spend time. Now obviously when you're giving a mock, you're in the thick of it. समझ में नहीं आता है कि टाइम कहाँ जाता है, राइट? You're like, oh, I was solving this question, it's been 10 minutes, whatever it is. So focus on, when you go back to analyze your mock, you see a question and then you feel like, oh, here I spent a lot of time. In the next mock, remember the emotion that you were going through. In the next mock, if you feel like, oh, I'm going into that loop or I'm going into that panic, then recognize that emotion. That's very important. A lot of people can't do that within the stress, and it's easy to say as well, right? But that's something that you can practice. Sectional tests, timed sectional tests, reducing the time for sectional tests, if that's what you feel suits you. Those sorts of things are in general good ways to increase your speed of solving questions. For math, of course, it's an entirely subjective thing. So you need to look at, math is kind of subjective. For math, the way of increasing speed is really to practice looking into. I think someone is unmuted. Do you want to say something? Okay. All right. Math, everyone's kind of speed in math is subjective. I myself was not one of the fastest people in math, but I made up for it by solving English and CR faster. That gave me more time to focus on math. So don't really focus on hard limits for each section. A lot of times, because the difficulty also tends to vary. So if you are kind of tending to spend more time on legal in this particular mock, chances are most people are kind of tending to do that. So don't focus that much on that, but do recognize when you're spending too much time on one question, and then maybe think, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to either make a guess or move on. Around 70 करने में 2 hours हो जाते हैं. I understand it can be kind of frustrating if you can't. try to kind of not focus on accuracy for a bit and focus on attempt and see how that works out. Obviously your scores will suffer a hit and it will be painful and all of that, but try to focus on attempt and see where that gets you. Like if I am not focusing on accuracy, if I am just saying instinct pe meko ye lag raha hai ki B is the answer, I don't think A is the answer, okay fine, I'm taking B and moving on, not thinking about it anymore. So try to develop that kind of a perspective, because that's the kind of perspective you will use in CLAT. Now accuracy is something you can focus on separately in practice, but attempt rate in that kind of high pressure mock environment is something that you have to practice in mocks regardless of initially what effect it has on your accuracy. A mock is just practice, it's not any reflection of how you're going to perform in class. um
How much time would you
what
recommend for
time?
giving each section?
Right, that's the next. Oh, for each section. Right, for each section I would recommend, I think English CR I would spend like 20 20 to 25 minutes. Depends on the difficulty of the sections, guys. That's what I said, don't focus a lot on like you know, if I can't do this in 25 minutes, it's taking me 30 minutes instead. How what's going to happen? A lot of times it tends to vary. In general, I would say 25 minutes for English CR, 10 minutes for math. Uh, then what else? GK would also probably take you like max 10 minutes and rest of the time for legal. But that was my personal division, because legal I would take a lot of time to reason it out. Focus on your strengths and see, you know, if legal there's somebody who can do legal in 30 minutes and still get a decent accuracy, then that's great. Then you want to give more time to your other sections. Uh,
Hi, Anushka. I think you can take one last question and we'll wrap it up then.
yeah, same. I'm kind of looking for how many. Hold on. I'm just looking through the chat questions. There's a lot of
No
them.
problem, no problem. Yeah.
Right. There's someone talking about, should we attempt tougher sections first or last? Right. So a lot of that depends on your like psychological makeup while doing the mock. There's people I know who would attempt their toughest section first and feel like, oh, finally I'm done with it. Me personally, math was my toughest section, and every single mock where I've tried to attempt math first, and if even one question has been outside of my expected difficulty level or something that I haven't been able to do, it has affected my performance throughout the entire mock. So you need to test yourself. You need to test yourself with multiple solving orders so that you can figure out a combination that works for you on a mental level. It's important to have a sense of comfort when you're giving the mock, even more than your like actual accuracy and all of that. It's important for you to be calm, because it's a logical exam. You can't reason out anything if you're not calm. So I would recommend try different combinations. Try attempting your toughest section first. See if you know, is that affecting your accuracy in other sections or in the toughest section? Does that affect your sense of comfort throughout the mock? And determine that for yourself.
Hey, I just had a final doubt. In some
Right.
of the passages, when we try to find a conclusion, we usually look for the words like therefore, hereafter. We try to find out the key words, and from then, we try to derive the
Right.
conclusion. But there are some difficult, tougher passages where the author doesn't clearly states the conclusion or what he wants to say from the passage. How to find
Mhm.
that?
Right. So for that, I would use something. Mostly your therefore test that Ritvik mentioned. He mentioned, you know, going through indicator words. That should cover most of your passages. Otherwise, I would use something called the why test. Any sentence that I would encounter, I would ask it, oh, why are you saying this? Now, if there's a reason for the author saying it, then you can determine easily whether it's a premise or a conclusion. Right. So if the author is saying, you know, as I mentioned, like, okay, maybe let's say 25% of girls like the color blue, right? So, and on the basis of that, he's making the argument that all girls uniforms in school should be blue. Now if I look at this sentence, all girls uniforms in school should be blue, and I ask it the question, why are you saying this? Then I can go to that earlier statement that said 25% of girls and all of that. But if I ask the question why to 25% of girls like blue, then there's no clear answer for that. I don't know why they like blue. I don't know why 25%. Now that is a premise. If you can answer a clear why for a statement, that's usually a conclusion. It might not be the main conclusion, but it's a sub conclusion. And if it's a very complicated argument, even identifying a sub conclusion is enough. So that's the kind of test that I would use.
Great, great. Thanks, Anushka, for this amazing session. It was really a pleasure to have you and listen to your insights. Even I myself learned a lot from you, and like your session will help me also to guide our mentees in this course of preparation. Thanks a lot for taking out time out of your precious school schedule at NLS. And yeah, I'm really thankful to you for taking the session. I think you can leave the meeting, and I'll take it forward with the
Right. Thank you
participants.
so much for having me.
Thank you, Anushka.
Right.
Hi everyone. So I am Manish, and it was really an amazing session. Even I learned a lot. Like, I was personally not good at CR and English, and the session taken by Anushka really helped me to increase my pool of knowledge to help you guys further in your preparation journey. So just to give you a glimpse about the National Law Training Institute. So this initiative has been started by a couple of mentors like at NLS. We are the NLS students and the CLAT toppers. And we have started this initiative to provide you quality and accessible mentorship at very reasonable prices. As you can see, the prices are very reasonable, and like 600 per month or 750 per month is hardly anything as compared to other coaching and other mentorship programs that have been running. We are also providing you GK weekly mocks and GK weekly MITs coupled with other topper notes, like our mentors who themselves prepared exhaustive notes for their CLAT preparation journey. They have been sharing their notes with you all. And yeah, it would be great if you join us, and if you give us an opportunity to guide you throughout your CLAT preparation journey. If you have any doubts regarding the program, you can unmute yourself and please clarify. Khushi is asking, how can NLTI help her? Just a minute. Yeah. How NLTI helps student who is scoring around 40. So Khushi Priya, what we have been doing is we are making study groups of 4. So whoever is scoring between the range of 40 to 50, we have created a study group for them, and you will be allotted 3 more study buddies. So when you are allotted 3 more study buddies, what you do is you decide. We provide you GK weekly topic list and GK backlog list. So you decide and you divide the topics among yourselves, and then you collate your notes. Like you will say that I'll do 1 to 10 topics. The other person will say 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and 30 to 40. So this way, you have to just research for the 10 questions, but in return you get the material for entire 40 questions. This is the help that study buddy groups provide, and this is not the only like perk of getting a study buddy. You can decide like which mock to give and then analyze it together, and this will help you analyzing and giving mocks together will help you identify your strong and weak sections. So in this way, the entire study buddy group who's scoring between the range of 40 to 50 will gradually cross that 50 threshold, the 60 threshold, and ultimately reach the dream college of dream college. So the another thing of study buddy group and our mentorship program is the accountability that you have. So when you are in a study buddy and you are mentored by a personal NLSIU mentor who is a CLAT topper, so we get to know that you are not putting in required effort, but your other study buddies are. So for example, if your other study buddies cross your 50 marks threshold, but you are still stuck on 42, so we'll get to know that you are not putting in a lot of effort, or either you are getting stuck somewhere even if you are putting a lot of effort. So that's when our role comes in. We help you out and we keep you accountable. Like the major what other coachings and other institutions have been doing is there's very less of accountability. Okay, you score 40, you score 50, nobody's gonna ask you why are you scoring 40 or 50. But we'll be keeping a constant like eye on you, or we'll be in touch with you constantly and ask you why are you not scoring 40 to 50. Every week our NLS mentor and a CLAT topper will have a separate session with your study group. Like he'll devote 30 to 40 minutes just for your study group and ask you what you have done for the previous week and what your goals would be for the next upcoming week. And this way you will be accountable to your mentor, and he'll report me that okay, Khushi is not working hard and we need to push her, or we need to encourage her to do like put in a lot of effort. So this way this initiative is going to help you. For more details, you can refer to our Telegram channel. We have created a poster there, and you will get to know more the perks of joining our channel. If anyone has any doubt relating to our program, please unmute yourself and I'll be happy to help.
I had a doubt regarding the NMTI.
Yeah.
As there are five sections in the CLAT paper, will the teachers be divided, like given their own forte and be taking only the English section, or the mentors are going to combinedly take all the subjects, like the for the
Ritvik,
mentors?
so just as you saw today, we had a separate special master class for CR and English. In this way, like, uh, you talk about Rishabh Shivani, All India Rank 1. He's our mentor, but might not be that good in like CR or English, or he might not be that good in GK. What we are doing is we'll be bringing in mentors who specifically ace that section. So let's say Anushka was here among us today. So she was the one who completely aced or completely like got the highest marks among all her batchmates in the CR and English section, and that's why we brought her here, and that's why she took a master class. So this way we'll be organizing a lot of master classes for just our enrolled students. I had a lot of requests today that please make this like session available for all, and that's why we did that. But from going onwards, like these sessions will be only for our enrolled students, and we'll be bringing in NLS students and CLAT toppers, like the one who aces the quantitative technique section, one who has got 12 out of 15, or one who has got 28 out of 35 in the GK section. We'll be calling such people to take separate classes for you all, and your mentors will be there to guide you every week. Okay, so let's say you are allotted Harshit AIR 4 as your mentor, so he'll be taking separate session for you, doubt clearing session on every week, on every weekend. But these mentors who come in for separate special classes will be there for every enrolled students. Okay, so next week we might probably have a separate specific session for legal reasoning. So the person who has topped the legal reasoning section among all her batchmates, among his or her batchmate, will be called upon, and he or she will take the session. So this way we'll have separate master classes for every session, so just to ensure that no doubt goes unanswered.
Okay.
Yeah, Parini has a doubt. Someone. Yeah,
Hello.
yeah, definitely. Arey, why not, Prini? So you will have one thing is you will have your study buddies also. So for let's say you gave a mock today, CL mock, and you have a doubt in let's say 35th question. You will write that question in the study buddy group that will be allotted to you, and the rest of the mentees who are your study buddies can help you find out the right answer. That this is the right answer. If they are also not able to answer, then our mentors will obviously look into that. And our mentors are not only there for the weekly doubt clearing live section, but they are also there to help you out during the chat option, and we promise you that whatever your doubt is, that doubt will be answered within like 12 to 14 hours. 12 to 14 hours is the maximum. Our mentors usually reply within like time span of 3 to 4 hours. You also need to consider the hectic time schedule at NLS, and considering that our promised time frame is 12 hours, that within 12 hours your doubt will be answered, but usually the time period is 3 to 4 hours. So our mentors will also reply to your subject specific queries that you might have in the chat box. Anything else you want to know about it? What is the fees for the program? So Tushar, right now the early bird offer is going on. So we are charging 2,400 for 4 months till CLAT 2022, 2023, like in December. But after this early bird offer is exhausted, we'll be charging 3,000 for 4 months. Any other query?
I have a
Kushi,
question.
yeah, Prasun, go ahead.
I have a question. We have 2023 CLAT 2020 will held on December. So what?
Yeah.
How I can study in the 3 months for whole subject of CLAT? I am in class 12th. So what steps should
Uh,
I
uh,
follow?
Prasun, these questions have been answered in our previous videos on YouTube. You can just type on the YouTube chat search option National Law Training Institute, and we have like 3 to 4 interviews with CLAT toppers who have precisely answered this question: how to manage class with uh, class 12 with boards and class 12 with CLAT. And we have also answered like the 4 month strategy, and also please refer to the YouTube section, and we have answered all these queries. Yeah, just coming back to Khushi. So Khushi is asking that many coaching institute does not focus on low mark student. Yeah, Khushi, but our program is precisely for you all. We are not combining you with any other student who is scoring like 90 or who is scoring 100. We'll be combining you, we'll be lotting a study buddy who's scoring in the same exact scoring range that you are in right now. If you are scoring 45, we'll be allotting a study buddy who's also scoring 45. If you are scoring 90 plus, you'll be allotted a study buddy who's also scoring 90 plus, 95 plus. So just because you get together and motivate each other to cross that 100 threshold or 50 threshold, just because this creates a sense of like trust, friendship, camaraderie, that yeah, we are all together and we all need to ace CLAT together. So we'll be allotting you a separate personalized NLS mentor, and you'll be allotted a study buddy who's scoring in the exact like same range. I think that can I join for 1 month? Uh, Kushi, we had this a feasibility of joining for 1 month, but we are doing away with it. But yeah, if you met, okay, let's say extend this for today. If you want to take a trial, you can join for 1 month, but we are trying to do away with this program. The program is now available only for 4 months by paying 2,400. But if you want, you can take a trial and join the program for 600 per month as well. Ishita is asking, how can we subscribe for the program? Ishita, I've shared the Telegram link. I'll share it again. Just give me a minute. Yeah, please join this Telegram link and you will find more details about the program. Cool. Chalo. Okay, guys. See you. It was a pleasure having you here, and I hope you will like my initiative and yeah, uh, appreciate us and what our efforts have been in this towards this initiative. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening out to me and to your mentor, Anushka. It was great having you here. Thank you. And thank you, Paras, for hosting this session for me, owing to my unavailability in the starting. Thank you.